We should probably go ahead and start. We record this session, Mayor, so that we
Okay.
can distribute it and share it with members of our communities. And I know in even speaking with my family members last night about the session that was happening this morning, I know this is such a serious problem that so
Mhm.
many are dealing with now and really trying to discern in so many ways, whether it's in this sort of messaging or even in media, what is real and what is not, and how we can stay safe online. I was intrigued at the State of the Cities luncheon when you had mentioned that you'd planned this session for the residents of Los Altos Hills, and I'm so glad that you could join us to share this more widely across our community. So thank you for joining us, Mayor Bhateja, and please do go ahead and continue.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for having me here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the ways to keep yourself safe in this rapidly evolving age of online threats. Um, also want to acknowledge that this was done with the help of the Los Altos Hills Technology Committee. That's an amazing group of people, very, very smart, and so we put this together. So this is the agenda. First of all, I'll go over briefly the different types of scam. Also talk about how to reduce your risk and, and some tips about password safety, how to identify and avoid scams, and different ways to protect your accounts and devices. And I actually have a theme here. I'm going to talk more generally about different issues. And then at the end, towards the end, I'll have a few specific slides of actions that you can take. So with that, this is the growth of scams online over the last few years. In our town, at least, the losses from online scams have gone to be about 10 times the losses due to physical properties losses, burglaries and such. So this is a much bigger issue than when you lock your door. You're protecting your physical assets. You lock your car, you're protecting your car. Um, the online losses are much greater than what you would suffer from losing physical property. So here's some things you can do. First of all, be informed of the different types of scams. We'll cover that. How to reduce your risk, and then we'll also talk about whom to contact in case you feel like you've gotten scammed. So there are different classes of scams. I'm just going to go over them very briefly. One is a impersonation scam. Somebody calls you claiming they're a grandchild, or the IRS, or Microsoft says your computer is infected, or there's a charity. There are financial scams where somebody can mail you a check and ask you to refund part of it, but then you realize you sent them the refund, but the check was fraudulent. There's employment scams. Recently, there was a case of somebody who bought a property and showed up, they bought it online, and then showed up and discovered that there really wasn't for sale even. So, there are a lot of financial scams like that. There are digital scams where somebody sends you an email or simulates a voice or sends you an SMS. And then there are romance scams online that particularly prey on lonely people. Authentication scams where your email is hacked or your phone is hacked. I just got an email last week from a resident saying, can you please help me with, and this is a resident I knew personally very, very well. He said, can you please help me? I need to send some money to a friend of mine who is suffering from cancer. And here's the email to send them, an Amazon gift card and so on. And fortunately, I waited, thought about it, felt I better check with them. And of course, it turned out their email had been hacked. And, so it's quite pervasive. So here's a link at the bottom of a description of these different types of scams if you want to study them a little more detail. So how do you reduce your risk and keep yourself safe? The first thing is to use strong, unique passwords. And I know it sounds like a chore. How am I going to remember all these passwords? Well, you don't have to. You should be using a password manager. But it's very important to use a unique password for every account because if you don't, if somebody gets hold of one of those password accounts, um, then all of them are compromised. And avoid using predictable words or phrases or names or birthdays. Use totally random characters, upper and lowercase letters, numbers, special symbols, and make sure that you really are not reusing passwords. Enable multi-factor authentication. I think a lot of people are aware of this. Um, you can get a code from your bank, say when you're trying to log in, even though you know the password, they'll text you a code on your phone. A better solution than that is to use what's called an authentication app because the text can be intercepted by somebody, but the authentication code on your app is more secure. So because you're going to use these unique, complex passwords, the best way to keep track of them is to use a password manager. And honestly, I was very hesitant to use a password manager because I said, what if a password manager gets hacked? But actually, a password manager is pretty secure. And the important thing is they remember all of these complex passwords that you have, different passwords for every site. There's one other advantage of a password manager, which is, if your site it looks the same as a regular site, but actually isn't. So let's say in this example, you think you're going to ebay.com, but you got a link in your email that looks like eBay, but it's actually ebuy.com. And you might go in there, enter your username and password, and somebody now has your username and password. Well, the password manager will not let you enter your eBay credentials on eBuy. So it will make sure that you're entering the passwords for the correct site. Even more secure way is to not use a password at all. There's something called a pass key. And this is where the author authenticate you by using a fingerprint on your phone or sending you a link in your email, things like that. So there is nothing to hack, right? There is no password anymore. It's done with the fingerprint or some kind of message on your phone or your email. So those are some ways to protect your passwords. And I can't emphasize enough, it's really helpful to use a password manager. And I've listed some examples of password managers there. I use Bitwarden. It's a little bit more complex, but almost every browser now will offer to remember your passwords. And that is, in fact, a password manager. So it's a good way to do that. And if you're using the same browser on your phone and on your computer, the browser will keep track of those passwords across devices. So that's really helpful. So I talked a little bit about passkey. Think of this as your device is your password. Now, if your device is your password, you need to protect your device. So make sure you're using a screen lock on your device, fingerprint or a pin or a pattern. This way, there are no passwords to remember. There's no password to hack. But make sure that you protect your device really carefully. And because if someone gets access to your unlocked device, they're off to the races with your passwords. So pass keys are safer than passwords because again, there's no password to hack. Now, there's a site called Have I Been, and I apologize for the way it's spelled, but this is the correct link. Have I Been, I pronounce it pwned. I don't know how to pronounce that. And if you go to this site and you enter your password, it will tell you if your password has been found in a data breach. So if you have certain passwords that you, for whatever reason, are not totally random, and you want to find out if they've been used somewhere, you can go to this site and enter your password, and you're not telling it which site the password is for. You're just entering the password and saying, was this ever found in a data breach? And it'll tell you if it has or not. Oops. Let's talk about the attack surface, right? It's unauthorized access to your computer, your phone, or your email. These are the weakest links. So to protect your computer, you should only download software from authentic sites. Don't be downloading Microsoft Office from some weird site because that may be compromised. Don't give anyone access to your computer, either in person or remotely. Sometimes tech support companies will say, hey, give me access to your computer. Avoid doing that unless you are sure that this is the right, agent that you're working with. And even then, it's risky because you may feel sure and you may be wrong. Um, so sometimes they'll say, okay, we're calling from Microsoft because your computer has been hacked. Can you please give us access? Never do that. Microsoft is not going to call you. Uh, so the other thing is protecting your phone. I recommend using a robust screen lock, and by that I mean a fingerprint or a pin or a pattern. I don't like the facial recognition because if you're sitting at a restaurant, somebody grabs your phone, holds it up to your face, it's unlocked, and they run away. Now you've lost your phone and it's unlocked. So I don't like the facial recognition. It's very convenient, but I just use a fingerprint instead. And also make sure that your screen times out on your phone after a short while, so that if you happen to leave it unlocked, it automatically locks. Another really important thing is something called SIM protection. This is where I'll talk a little bit more about this actually on a later slide, but this is essentially where somebody steals your phone number. And then, like we've talked earlier, you should be using multi-factor authentication. I actually use something called a hardware key. There are pictures of it on the side there. This is another layer of security on top of your password that you can use to protect your financial accounts. So all of the major brokerages offer this capability, where you enter your username and your password, and then every so often they'll say, "Hey, enter your key." Plug in your key into your device, your phone or your computer. And so by doing that, you are adding another layer of security because now even if someone gets your username and password, they need that physical key in order to access your account. And to be safe, you get two of those physical keys. In case you lose one, you still have another one. Okay, how do you identify a scam? So here's an email, and now it looks like it's coming from Amazon, and it says, hey, you need to update some details, verify your account, your subscription's expired. And how do you know this is genuine? Okay, there are many tips now. The first one is if you put your cursor on this verify my account button, but don't click it. Um, Let me show you that. You float your cursor over this and you don't click it, it'll show you it's actually not Amazon. It looks like it might be Amazon-prime-renew.com, but that's not Amazon. Okay, so that's one thing. Notice that there's an element of fear in this, right? They're saying your subscription is expired. You need to hurry up and do something. That is classic in a scam. Every time somebody is trying to get you to act quickly, it is very likely that there's something going on that's not quite right. So be very careful about that. In fact, almost every case I've heard of where somebody's gotten scammed, there's been this element of urgency. And then you notice from the sender's email, it's actually not Amazon. It's some complicated email address. So if you float your cursor over the email, you'll be able to see exactly what it is. So these are some cues on how to spot a fake email. How easy is it to fake an email? So there's a website you can go to. I did this, for one of our council members, Stan Mock. I entered his email as the from. I entered my email as the to. And I said, check out my fake email to you, and sure enough, here's an email that looks like came from Stan Mock to me. So I know this looks really scary. It's actually not as scary because most email readers nowadays will detect that this is a fake. And the way they do that is they look at the actual header. So Gmail, for example, is excellent at filtering these out. And that's how it puts a bunch of emails into spam. And the way they do it is they look at where the email is actually originating from. And it's actually not from Stan Mark's email, it's from this other place up in the Czech Republic. And so usually these are filtered out. Um, with Gmail, you won't see them at all. With Yahoo, I think they go into spam. But just be aware, even if it looks like it might be coming from an authentic source, an email may not be legitimate. Okay. So let's say I did get this email from that looks like it came from Stan, and it looks a little bit odd. The thing I should do is to call Stan and talk to him, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind. There's different types of fraud in the marketplace. Usually has to do with getting a really good deal, like this $139 Rolex watch. Really good deal. Probably not authentic. So when you're in the marketplace, you should protect your credentials, use multi-factor authentication. Don't share critical information, date of birth, social security number with retail sites. Uh, but you should also be aware that your information could be out there already. Okay. Watch out for email notifications of an address or phone number change. So let's say you get an email from Amazon and it says, well, we're just letting you know we have updated your address as you requested. Aha. How did you request that? You should then go to the Amazon site and check, is your address actually correct or is this fake, right? But if in some cases those email notifications are correct and somebody got into your account and changed your address and is now off to the races ordering stuff with your credit card to their address, so you need to watch out for those email notifications. Never send out gift cards or Western Union, transmissions and stuff like that. These are huge red flags. When somebody says, "Send me the money on Zelle," send me the money through Western Union or gift cards. Apple gift cards are very popular. Stay away from those transactions completely. Always stay on a protected platform. For example, Airbnb. The host may say, "Hey, why don't we do this offline and I'll give you a discount." Never do that because then they can just take your money and say, you never paid, right? So always go on the protected platform. So here's an example of a coffee machine. This is one of my favorite coffee machines. Um, you know, the regular price is around $800. These guys at Centura Coffee are selling it for about 300. Wow, maybe they got a great deal. So um, I go onto the website and I say, hey, is this a new machine? Because maybe it was used. Well, yeah, it's brand new. Okay, so I go to this site called whois.com. And with that, you can look up any domain and see what's going on with it. So I enter centuracoffees.com in that whois.com lookup, and look what I find. This domain was recently registered, right? So it hasn't been around that long. And so, um, this is probably a fly-by-night operation. They're there to collect your cash, offer you this great deal, and just scam you. So now this is something that not everybody is maybe familiar with, but the point is, if you see a really good deal like that, it may be a new website, and you just need to be careful. Again, use authentic, protected, websites for your transactions. Here's an example of a phone scam, and this is something that generally is not very well understood. So I want to make sure I explain this really clearly. And this actually happened to a friend of mine. He got a call from AT&T saying, we have this great deal. We can give you a free iPhone. You just need to extend your contract and all that. The usual, telemarketing thing from a phone company. And he looked at the phone number and it looked like, yeah, this is AT&T because he went online to the AT&T website and checked the number and confirmed that this is the correct AT&T number because that's what they say over here at the AT&T site. So 3 weeks later, he had no iPhones. His account was hacked, and it's a scam. Well, but now it's confusing. This call came from AT&T. At least that's what it looks like. Well, the phone numbers can be spoofed, and what that means is somebody can make it look like they're calling from this 800 number, but they're actually not. And so that's what happened to my friend. He paid for the extended contract with AT&T and T and all of that, uh, but it wasn't AT&T that he was dealing with. So that leads to what I call the golden rule. Don't call me, I'll call you at the verified phone number. So had my friend said to the person calling, um, I'm going to call you back at the AT&T number. Can you please give me your extension? And he would have called AT&T and they would have said, we have no idea what you're talking about. There's no such person, there's no such extension, and we don't have this deal, right? And he could have saved himself from being hacked, from being scammed. So that's a really important rule. Uh, a friend of mine just recently got a call from her bank about a problem. It turned, even though the number appeared like it was the bank's number, it wasn't really the bank calling. And luckily, she was smart enough to call her bank back. And so that's again this golden rule: don't call me, I'll call you at the verified number. Don't just call them back at the number on your screen either. Make sure you're looking up the correct number on the website and then calling them. I told you I would explain a little bit about SIM swapping. So the way this works is, first of all, the scammer gets some data about you, and let's say I get some data and about someone. I'm able to call the phone or service provider and impersonate the victim. This actually can happen when somebody creates a fake ID and walks into a Verizon store and says, you know, I'm John. I dropped my phone in the pool and I need to transfer the phone number to my new device. And Verizon probably does not have the sophistication to really detect if an ID is fake or not. It's got John's name and address. It's got the guy's photograph, the guy who's walked in. And they say, okay, we'll switch that number to your device, right? Well, now all of those texts that you were expecting to get on your phone are now going to this other person. All the calls are going to this other person, and they're off to the races. So, how do you protect yourself against something like that? There's something called a SIM protection that you can put in. It's sometimes called a number porting pin, and I'll give you the actual links for each of the major cell phone providers where you can set this up. But you need to protect your SIM from being swapped to somebody else's device. There's something called a man-in-the-middle attack. So a scammer tricks you into thinking that you're on a bank site. So instead of bankofamerica.com, they replace the I in America with the number one. And, maybe you're not looking very carefully. You think, looks like Bank of America. And so I'm going to enter my credentials. Well, it's not really the Bank of America site, right? It's this other site. When you enter your username and password into this other site, well, now the guy's got your username and password. So now you might think, well, I still have multi-factor authentication. Here's where it's, you can, that can get compromised because you think you're on this site. The guy will send you a message saying, enter your one-time password, and you look at your authenticator app or whatever and enter your one-time password. Now he's got that as well. So now you can actually go to the Bank of America site and enter your username and password and your multi-factor authentication and get in. So be really careful that the site you think you're on is actually the site you're on. And one of the simplest ways to do that is to not click on links in your email. Uh, you'll type in the URL for the site you want to go to, type in the web address and go to it that way. Because otherwise, if you're not careful and you're on the wrong site, you're basically giving away your credentials. Yeah, so don't click on a link in an email or in a text. Go to the bookmarked link, right? Or type it in yourself. This is called the man in the middle attack because between you and Bank of America, there's this other guy who's collecting your credentials and getting access. Okay, so how do you protect yourself? Protecting your phone, like I said, I don't like the face unlock because somebody can grab your phone and hold it up to your face and unlock it. This has actually happened to a friend of mine. I recommend using a fingerprint. I think that's the most secure. A PIN is somewhat less secure because if somebody sees you typing in the PIN, they now know what your PIN is. So I really recommend using the fingerprint whenever possible. It's also really easy. You just tap on your phone and you're in. When you're using public Wi-Fi or hotspots, that can be risky. So if you're using a public Wi-Fi, use a VPN. Most phones nowadays have a built-in VPN, and it's just a way to protect yourself when you're using a public Wi-Fi. Some cellular service providers automatically use a VPN whenever you're using Wi-Fi or hotspots. Some of them use VPN all the time. I'm an Android guy. I'm sorry, I'm not an iPhone guy, but the Android certainly provides VPN on their phones, and I think you can get free VPN from Apple as well. But if not, your cell provider might make it available to you. So if you're on a public Wi-Fi at an airport or something, turn on your VPN. Another thing is to protect your credit card and financial accounts. I set up a text notification on my credit cards. Every time my credit card is used somewhere, I automatically get a text right away. And that I found that to be really helpful because then in the event that somebody is using my credit card, I'll get notified. So setting up those text or email alerts for your financial account is really important. We already talked about multi-factor authentication. If you're using an ATM, it's preferable to use a bank ATM rather than a retail ATM because bank ATMs are a little bit more secure. If you're using an ATM nowadays, not a lot of cash transactions nowadays, but if you are withdrawing cash from an ATM, take a look at the device, make sure they can install these little cameras now to kind of, look at your PIN as you're using the ATM, and they have a little card reader inside the card reader to get your card info. So preferably use a tap mechanism instead of inserting your card. That's more secure, or chip reader. So avoid swiping the card, avoid using the magnetic strip on your card. And always using a credit card is great because if there's any unrecognized charges, you're not liable for them. On almost all credit card companies nowadays, you can go online or in your app and lock your card. Let's say you left your card at a restaurant, you can just go to your app and lock the card. And then also for IRS and franchise tax board accounts, you can actually set up PINs so that somebody can't get your tax refund without knowing the PIN, right? So another level of security. Another really good thing to do is placing what's called a security freeze on your credit reporting agencies. So three three major credit reporting agencies are TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Um, what I do is I just go to each of them and say I want to place a security freeze on my credit, and that way nobody can open a credit account in your name, right? Nobody can walk into a Best Buy and open a Best Buy account in your name. They happen to have your information and a fake ID. They're able to do that. So if you place a credit security freeze, they cannot do that. It's not inconvenient to do a security freeze because in the event you actually want to open a new account, you can just go over there and temporarily lift the freeze for a day or a week or a month. It's immediate. So you decide you want to open a Best Buy account, well, you can just go online, turn off your freeze temporarily, open your account, and your freeze will automatically get back in. One thing to be aware of is there are two different mechanisms to do this. One is called a freeze, and one is called a lock. The freeze is what Congress put in place, and it's free, just like the word freeze. Freezes are free. The credit reporting agencies don't like that, so they will encourage you to do what's called a lock. A lock is not free, and it does essentially the same thing as a freeze. So just remember to use a freeze. Freezes are free. Okay. So here are the specific recommendations, and these are the screens that you might want to take a photo of and follow up on them. So use a password manager. Don't ever reuse passwords. Always use multi-factor authentication, and if you like to use a hardware key like I do, that's even more secure. The brand I use is YubiKey, YUBIKEY. Remember that an authenticator app is safer than a one-time PIN, and never share your one-time PIN with anyone. Somebody calls you and says, "Can you give me the one-time PIN?" No, thank you. Don't do that. SIM protection, add a number transfer PIN or similar credential, and I'll show you the links for that. And then set up and monitor alerts, text alerts from your bank, your credit card company, your cell provider, your brokerage. Just set up these text alerts so that every time a transaction occurs, you'll get a notification. Avoid clicking on links in emails and texts, and protect your phone with a robust screen lock, preferably a fingerprint. Remember that golden rule, don't call me, I'll call you, because phone numbers can be hacked. Place a credit freeze with all three credit reporting agencies. And then most importantly, be wary of acting in haste. Remember that element of fear. So the most common response I get from people who've been hacked, and usually it's, somebody who's pretty smart, they still got hacked, is the most common response is, "I never thought it would happen to me." And let me tell you, I never thought it would happen to me, and I have been scammed. I have a trademark. I got an email that looked like it was from a renewal of my trademark, and it turned out it wasn't actually from my trademark from the USPTO, and so I got scammed. Luckily, I was able to deal with that, but it can happen to anyone. And when people tell you if a message looks suspicious, be careful. Be careful even if the message doesn't look particularly suspicious, okay? Because that's the intent of the scammers, to not make it look suspicious. So you should always be skeptical a little bit. And I told you I would tell you how to set up the SIM protection for each of the major cellular service providers. So if you go to each of these links, these are the exact links you need to set up your SIM protection on your phone, on your cell phone. So that way, if you actually lose your phone and you want to transfer the number to a new device, you will need this PIN in order to do that. So keep that PIN safely uh, so that this will prevent your phone number from being given to somebody else without your consent. More good practices, use a VPN when using public Wi-Fi. Again, avoid clicking on links in your text messages or email. Avoid calling an 800 number listed in your email or text messages. First, make sure that the number is listed on the organization's website or call the organization's regular phone number. Uh, Avoid using public charging cords or chargers. So when you go to the airport and there's, the little cord that you can use to charge your phone, I never use those because that can actually be used to compromise your phone. I take my own charger, plug it into the wall, and charge my phone that way. Be aware of messages from your cell phone service provider. Um, so there are some links of some stories I'm going to share with you shortly. But there's a lady who was on a vacation. She got a strange message from Verizon saying, we're sending your phone number to your new device. She didn't know what it meant. And 3 days later, and several tens of thousands of dollars of compromised charges later, she had, she had to figure out that she should have paid attention to that message. Yeah. So, okay, don't leave your AirDrop or your nearby share enabled. This is ways that people can, get and receive data from your phone. Turn it off when you're not using it. Okay, if you are a victim, God forbid, first of all, gather all the information and report the incident. Make sure you change your passwords. Contact your financial institutions, if whichever ones you think are impacted. Report the incident to your local police. In case of our Los Altos Hills, that's our sheriff. For Los Altos, that would be your Los Altos police. You can report it at the FTC site. But a really helpful tip is to call the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline. So there's the phone number for it. Call that number and they'll give you personal advice on what to do in your particular situation. But I think that's probably the most useful of all of these. The reporting is helpful, but probably won't get you your money back. I mentioned this, I never thought it would happen to me. And so here are some stories of people. This is from a lady who said, the day I put $50,000 into a shoebox and handed it to a stranger. Now you would think, why would anybody do that? But that's the nature of scams. They're kind of, they use the element of fear and they're almost hypnotic, and then people get caught up in it, and then there you go. I have a CFO in town who put $13,000 in a shoebox and left it in the back of somebody's car because they called him and told him that he had child porn on his router, which, by the way, you can't have data on your router, but he's a very smart guy. He was going through some personal issues with a horse that was sick one day, and he was kind of worried about losing the horse, and got this call at 6 a.m. and he had, his mind was somewhere else, and one thing led to another, and there you go. So anyway, this is a particularly wrenching story about a White House scientist who was scammed out of $655,000 because they moved her 401k account. They compromised her email, and so they told her that her accounts were hacked, and they're calling from Microsoft or someplace, and so they said, we're going to help you secure these accounts, move your money into this other account so that it's protected. And from that account, they were taking it off and sending it into and buying crypto for themselves. And the notifications from the new account that she was getting, they were immediately deleting that from her email. So she didn't know that that was happening. And the saddest part of the story is after all that, because there were withdrawals from her 401k, the IRS came after her for money that she didn't have. A very, very sad story. But these are things that you really need to be very, very careful about. Uh, this one about a finance worker who paid out $25 million. This was an amazing story. And in the age of AI, you really have to be careful. There was a Zoom call with this company in Hong Kong, and the CFO was on the call telling his finance guy to remit payments to some companies offshore. So the guy did it. Turned out that wasn't really the CFO. It was an AI, what they call deep fake. They had replicated the CFO's voice and his photo and everything, and this guy thought he was actually following instructions. And so they lost a lot of money that way. They were able to recover some of it, but they lost millions of dollars. Anyway, so here are some links if you want to sort of get a sense for how people have been scammed and just sort of get a better sense for what to look out for and how people have kind of been roped into these scams. Okay, that's the end of my presentation. I hope this is helpful, and I really encourage you to take the steps that were listed in the recommendations. I hope that that will help you all stay safe. Okay.
Incredible information, Mayor. That's very helpful. We usually open the floor to questions. So are there questions, comments? Abby.
So oftentimes you'll call an airline, for example, and there's a long wait period. They ask you to enter your phone number, they will call you back.
Yeah.
I know somebody who got scammed in the callback,
My
cost
goodness.
them $1,700.
Wow.
So,
That's a new one. I had not heard that before.
yeah, well, I wasn't me, but somebody close to me who was
Mm.
absolutely stunned and shocked. And as you've indicated, the credit card company would do nothing about it, the airline would do nothing about it. And, so basically, I think what you're saying is that whether it's 20 minutes or however long, stay online.
I I would say, given what you just told me, that sounds like excellent advice. Again, don't call me, I'll call you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's the first time I've heard of that one. But that's the thing with these guys is they they're like water flowing, they always try and find a way. So you got to be really careful. Yeah.
You questioned Zelle early on.
Hmm.
I use Zelle in my checking account to pay and transfer money. Is that safe?
So it is not unsafe, but I think the if somebody calls you you've not done business with before and says, send me this money on Zelle, what you need to understand is Zelle is not as safe as a credit card, right? With a credit card, if it's a fraudulent charge, you can call your credit card company and say, hey, cancel this payment. With Zelle, once the money leaves your account, it's gone. Some banks will add a little bit of delay to that, but it's not much. So if you find out a couple of days later that this was a fraudulent transaction, you're out of luck. The money's gone.
But there shouldn't be any problem sending it between family members and friends who you know.
Correct. As a payment mechanism, it's fine. It's when you're dealing with, so I guess what I'm trying to say is the scammers will encourage you to use payment systems like Zelle and Western Union and gift cards because there's no recovery. So when you're doing a Zelle transaction, your antennas just need to be up a little bit, right?
Maria.
Um, Kim, did you mean me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Um, can you put the recommendations page back up?
Sure. Give me a
Thank you.
second.
Be happy to share the presentation as well. I'm sure we can add it as a link if you're comfortable with that, Mayor, on our website, etc.
Absolutely. Actually, what I'll do is I'll send you a link to the presentation, and then you can just share that. That may
Okay.
be the easiest way to do it.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Unless it's a scam, of course.
Yeah, well, you're right to be skeptical. So here's one screen of the recommendations. There are about three of them. So I'll leave this on for a couple of seconds. You can take a picture if you like.
Looks
Mayor,
like
what
Mark
is,
has his hand raised.
yeah,
And then this is the SIM protection setup. Let me hold that on for a couple of seconds more. You want to take a photo of that. And then here's more good practices.
Mayor, what is the most common theme that you've found when you do hear about these things from members of our community?
There isn't a single theme. It's just, again, the things to watch out for are the elements of urgency and fear. So in the case of this guy who put $13,000 into a shoebox, he was really afraid when somebody told him there's child porn on your router. I mean, that just scared the heck out of him. And he was told, well, the FBI and the FTC and the whatever is going to come after you. So you need to, if you want, we can put your money in a federal lockbox and this and then that way you'll have access to your money for a while you're kind of negotiating your case and so on. And that's the element of fear. I mean, he's a very smart guy, but gave into the fear. So the fear, it's the same thing that works in the stock market, fear and greed, right? So greed is when you see this Rolex watch is going for a really good deal, and like, oh, I've always wanted one, and now you're done, right? So watch out for those types of situations. That's what I would say.
And Mark Seidel?
Hi, Mayor. I was wondering, I've heard that newer AI models are going to be able to crack your passwords in the future. And I'm just wondering or have you advice on how to future-proof passwords? You can use a password manager, you can use a password if something can go in there and just crack it, then how do you?
Well, so the ways I think you have to use your password can be compromised. Let's just put that out there, right? Every now and then you'll find that a password has been compromised. There are different ways that can happen, but let's assume that that's the case. So you do need to have a multi-factor authentication. That's a really good way to protect yourself, and ideally use an authenticator app, not a text message. And then for accounts that are really critical, really sensitive, I'm thinking brokerage accounts, bank accounts, and things like that, you can use the hardware key, right? So even if someone has your password, even if they get the authentication, the multi-factor authentication, they still need the physical key. So the real answer to your question, Mark, is you need layers of protection. And so your password is one layer, the multi-factor is another layer, the hardware key is yet another layer. So for my critical accounts, brokerage, bank, stuff like that, I always use a hardware key. Now, for things like your credit card account, maybe you don't need a hardware key for that because you can always call your credit card company and reverse the transaction and say, hey, I'm contesting this transaction or whatever. So you have a little bit more, you know, you have more degrees of freedom in how to address that problem. But with something like a brokerage or a bank account, or even something like PayPal or whatever, using a hardware key is a really good idea. I'll see if I can bring up that page where I talk about the hardware key. Let's see if I can find it. Sorry about that. There we go. So the one I use is called a YubiKey. And they come in USB and USB-C models. I use the USB-C model because most devices nowadays are using USB-C. And that works in your phone, it works in your computer. It also has what's called near field, so that you don't actually have to plug it into your phone. You can just keep it next to your phone and it'll authenticate that way. But this is a good way to protect your most sensitive accounts. Okay.
Nicole?
So I wanted to share one thing we've done in our family, and I don't know how well this will actually work out, but you hear a lot of these scams where, grandson calls grandma and says, "Grandma, I'm in prison. I need money right now." And again, that sense of fear and urgency, and I need it right now. And with, even that example you shared of the deep fake video, that someone could sound like it, could look like the person you want to protect your family. What we've done is we've set up a word that is just like essentially our passcode. And it's the same word actually back in the 90s when it was a fad that you had to have a word. If someone came up to you and said, "Hey, I'm here to pick you up. Your mom sent me. What's the password?" So we have just a word in our family.
Yeah, that's a really good solution. We had that with our kids too, when they were growing up. And I'll tell you, if one of my kids called me and said, "Hey, I need money to be bailed out because I'm in a DUI or whatever the heck." Thankfully, it hasn't happened yet, but I would say, well, tell me, just to be sure I'm talking to the right person, who was your second grade teacher? Right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Or where is the last place you went to vacation with us? Something that only they would know, right?
Yeah.
And if they say, "Well, I'm in this terrible shape and I can't recall it right now," well, call me back. Yeah. So yeah, those are good ways to authenticate someone as the real person you think you're talking to. AI is going to make all of this exponentially more challenging. And as you said, with the deep fakes, not only voice, but also video deep fakes. In the links, I have an Obama deep fake. And they're actually very easy to make. You just need a short video of somebody, and you can feed that into these AI systems, and they'll produce a deep fake saying whatever you want. So you can get a deep fake of Obama wishing your kid a happy birthday, right? So you just have to be really careful about the range of possibilities and sort of be thoughtful about what you're doing. But most importantly, don't give out any money or gift cards or anything like that, or your passwords. Those are things to be really thoughtful about.
Wonderful. Any last questions or thoughts? I have some announcements here quickly, so we usually close with that, and then if there are others that have announcements to share as well, please feel free to do so. So I wanted to let you know that we've just completed the first year of the Leadership Development Program in Los Altos LEAD, being a part of the Chamber of Commerce, and so we're now accepting applications for this next upcoming class. We had 25 in this first year and had a very successful program. And so encourage you to consider who else in your network you might recommend. Thank you, Abby, for the program. It's been a wonderful way to contribute to our community and has been very well received. So please do consider future leaders, especially as we move to district voting. It's important that we are bringing leaders along in serving in other roles, whether it be board positions, commissions, etc. So Also, First Friday, this last Friday was a huge success. Lots of people out. We have a summer pilot program at Rancho Shopping Center. So this was the first time we've had a band at Rancho and had a nice turnout there as well. So we'll be having bands at the Rancho Shopping Center through October, just as a pilot this summer to see how the community receives that. A few ribbon cuttings that we have coming up. We'd love to have you join us. Let's see, the first is at the Breakfast Club, which is at Carmel Village. It's a triple ribbon cutting between Mountain View, Los Altos, and Palo Alto. Breakfast Club is a lovely breakfast restaurant there, and that will be June 20th at 3 p.m. That's a Saturday afternoon. And then we have a State Street Market. Laughing Monk has joined the market along with Conjo has an expansion restaurant there as well. That will be June 24th at 6 p.m. And then we have networking in Cupertino. We have a collaborative networking mixer at Trailhead Cyclery, June 25th from 5 to 7 p.m. And that's all I have. So any other announcements? All right. Thanks so much for joining us. As I mentioned, the session was recorded and we will also provide the link. Thank you so much, Mayor, for hosting this session. This will
My
be
pleasure.
so helpful, not only to each of us, but to the community at large. And I know I'm sending the link to my father in Kansas, so this is going viral across the country as well, because this is really, really timely information. And I'm so glad we were able to share that with the community today. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share it with the community, and thank you for all the good work you do with the Chamber of Commerce. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I'll send you the link via email.
Perfect.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a wonderful Wednesday, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.